A while ago, I was scrolling through the gram, as most of us do in our idle time, and I came across a listicle from one of those business advisory services out there. Ever since I opened the second Instagram handle, that's shortly after I started the podcast, the second Instagram handle is called Sales Conversations, and it's dedicated towards doing the sorts of things that I do with this podcast anyway. So sometimes I take episodes that I've shared here, the idea is expressed here, and then I try to repurpose it for an Instagram audience. And I figured it would be a good idea for me to follow people in the same space as I am, and trying to do, even if not necessarily in the sales related space, people who are also into business consulting, business advisory, all those sorts of things. It's always nice to know what's out there in the universe. Keep educated and keep updated. So there's one handle that I follow, and they have really cool listicles every now and then, and they put up a listicle of 5 skills every business owner should have that I figured I would share with you guys today, because the listicle has a lot of useful information that those of us in the wedding space need to learn about, and things that we definitely could improve on. But I've noticed that there's a trend when it comes to these sorts of things. The ideas expressed online, I don't think they're entirely holistic and capture the true picture of everything that we need to advance our business. So especially for those of us in the wedding and event space, a lot of the things we see on the internet aren't necessarily all that we need for us to be able to grow our business. And by that, I emphasize all. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's lots of good stuff out there, but it's not quite the whole picture. So let me run through the things that we had in this listicle. So number 1, customer service. Of course, for those of you who've been regular listeners, I guess that's no brainer. The customer service function is also part of the sales conversation, is also part of the sales process, because of the belief that, at least for those of us who believe in the classical ideas around sales and personal selling, the belief, the understanding, the principle is that it's not just enough to get people into our ecosystem. It's not just enough to get that piece of business from the bride and the groom. We also need to make sure that they're happy, and we also need to make sure that we get repeat business from them when the babies come along, and the birthday parties, and all of that. And also, we also need to make sure that we're going to be able to secure referrals through them when the younger sister is getting married, or the younger brother is getting married, or this groom man, or this what they called, bridesmaid, or maybe when Uncle Kunle, who was the guest of honor at the wedding, is celebrating his 60th birthday or something of that nature. So all these things are achieved through the customer service function. And so I would say, spot on. Yes, customer service is a top skill that every business owner should have. It's a top skill that every wedding and event professional should have. So it's not just enough to be a good photographer or to be a good wedding planner or a makeup artist. You also need to be good in customer service. Your customer service game has to be strong, and it has to be on point. So regardless of what you listen to on this podcast or other podcasts, make some time out in your day-to-day. Look for good material to follow, useful blogs, useful podcasts, ebooks, whatever. Try and up your game when it comes to customer service. Now, the second skill that every business owner should have, and every event and wedding professional should have, I would say more so, especially those of us who are involved in the wedding space, is communication skills. Now, since we, in particular, wedding people, we deal with an industry that is, how do I say, it's a people industry, basically. So you're constantly being assessed and evaluated about a number of things, how you dress, how you comport yourself, and then that also extends to how well you communicate. That doesn't necessarily mean that you must be all posh and sound like a thoroughbred when it comes to how you handle yourself in the English language, because it's a matter of switching. It's a matter of switching both ways. So, for instance, I am not very good with vernaculars. I don't speak Hausa. I spent a lot of time in Lagos. My uni was in Obafemi Awolowo University, and I really don't speak Yoruba, although I faff around like I do. But that's just to act a fool, more or less, and throw some humor around here and there. So I'm not really good at vernacular, and so yeah, I try to express myself the best way that I can. On the other hand, my video person, Shagun, we both went to the same schools. We're both in CKC, Gwagwalada in Abuja. We both left in junior secondary school, and then somehow we both ended up in Obafemi Awolowo University. So we've known each other for a while, although we didn't quite get cool with each other until we ended up in the wedding space, because Shagun is more of an let's say he's like a normal boy, so he's got street smarts and all of that, and I was more of a I was more of a Boy Scout, let's put it that way. So I was the Boy Scout, or rather let me say I am the Boy Scout and he is the normal boy. Now the reason why I'm bringing this up regards to communication is he is someone who is good with vernacular, and so he knows how to switch it both ways, and it's something that has really come in handy when we are in the middle of a sales situation and I'm doing the best that I can. I'm keeping things cool and ultra professional. And sometimes he gets a sense of, we need to ratchet things down a little bit. And on several occasions, when we're dealing with a Yoruba bride, for instance, I don't know how he does it. He's able to read them well, and then he smooths into that whole Yoruba flow, and next thing they're on a whole nother level, and things like that do make progress. So communication is not just about the language that you speak per se, or how polished you are in English, but you can ride the wave any which way. So you're not good in English, you're better in Yoruba or Hausa. It's not necessarily a downside. If all you speak is Pidgin, that's not necessarily a downside as well. The most important thing to pay attention to when it comes to communication is to make sure that you have the communications, the right communications framework in mind. So communication isn't a two-way thing. It's not a matter of one-way thing. It's not a matter of you speak, you pass across the information, and then that's it. For those of you who are regular listeners will remember that my old man was a journalist, and so from him, I learned about the communications. Can't remember what the tool is called, but basically the idea behind it is that communication isn't linear. It's not between you and me. I put something out, and you guys get the message, and then that's it. But that communication is cyclical, and so that means you pass across a message. The message gets to the recipient. The recipient gives out some form of feedback. You take the feedback on board, and then you use that to you take that on board when you're sending out your next bunch of messages, and that's how the whole thing goes round and round and round. Each time you're getting feedback and improving your message or the context of your message, and then sending it out again. Now, the whole point with this form of communication, this cyclical idea of communication, is we're looking at being effective communication. So the idea is that every time you send out a piece of info, you're trying to influence a particular course of action. There's something that you want people to do. There's something that you want people to do or to take on board. And through the feedback, you're able to gauge. You gauge whether he or she got the message, did the bride or the groom get the message, and then with the feedback, you get to take another shot at it. So communication, so long as you're paying attention to those dynamics, sometimes it's not necessarily important what language it is that you speak. So that's the reason why it's possible to have, let me move to politics now. It's possible to have two different candidates, and you have one candidate who is ultra polished, and then you have the other candidate who is less than sophisticated, should we put it that way? And you have it that the fellow who is less than sophisticated is the one who is always getting his message across, and because of that, he seems more endeared to the people. So in that case, it wouldn't matter if you are a wedding photographer who only speaks English, or you're a videographer who seems to switch quite well between English and Yoruba or Hausa. The most important thing is, if you have the right communications framework in mind and you're always listening for that feedback, the feedback loop is what will make you effective in communication. So, wedding photographers, event planners, video people, makeup artists, another skill that you need to work on, communication. Make sure that your communication skill is strong. Make sure that your listening game is tight, and always keep an eye out or an ear out for feedback. Listen, watch body language, those sorts of things. Pick up the right verbal and visual cues, and you should be able to grow your business. Now, the other things that were mentioned, money management, really important, especially for I'd say video people, videographers, and wedding planners, because you guys run large crews. So my guy Shegun, typically we'll have maybe 3 guys on camera, 1 guy on the drone. Depending on how elaborate the shoot might be, there might be somebody else on a mixer or things like that. So you see that the video guys are running large crews, and then wedding planners are definitely running really large crews. So you guys need to be on top of your money management skills, because there's money moving out on personnel. You're paying boys to get stuff done, boys and girls. There's also money that is going towards inventory, whether you guys have the right equipment. So money's being spent on personnel, being spent on equipment. Let's see, what else? Basically, there are lots of things that money is flowing in and flowing out. And then for wedding planners in particular, you guys are managing different vendors. So you're trying to hold some money in security. And so, basically, cash flow considerations are more of an issue for some people than others. So, videographers, wedding planners, people who handle stage and lighting people, I think. Well, I'm not sure. I don't have a thorough knowledge of that business, but there are a couple of people that need to pay more attention to money management than others. I guess we photographers and makeup artists, we can get by with being money illiterate only for a while anyway, because eventually we have to get more sophisticated and up our knowledge. How much money is coming in, how much money is going out. Excuse me. Where was I? How much money is coming in, how much money is going out. What's the cash flow? Are we positive, or are we negative? What are the outstanding liabilities? What do we owe to Inland Revenue Service, AMAC? That's the Abuja Municipal, because sometimes they have all these silly levies that they come up with, advertising levy, signage levy, and all these other trump up things that they come up with just to make money from us. So basically, you have to consider all those things. So money management skills, top skill. We need to make sure that our money management game is strong, or else you might end up in a situation like I did one year, the first year that I got an accountant, and then I found out that we got a bunch of money, and I was happy. I'm like, yay, we're doing good. And then the guy finishes the account, and he's like, no, you're not doing good. Yes, you guys put a lot of money in the account, but when you minus the expenses and all these other things, this tiny sum is all that was left for profit. And it was an eye-opener. And I'll say, as soon as you can afford to get an accountant, it's an eye-opening experience. The first time that you do get an accountant, you realize that you're not making as much money as you thought you did, because a year might be good and you bank maybe 3 to 4 million, and you think, I've made it, I'm a boss. And then the accountant sits down with the figures, and he's like, 4 million came in, but when you take in expenses and everything, that was more like 3.8. So really, this whole year, all you made was 200G. and it's an eye opener basically. So let's move on. And then the other skills of the top 5 in this listicle are collaboration and delegation. These are more management, internal and people management things, and that's not my area of expertise or interest, and so I'm not going to talk about them at all. So these are the top 5 skills that every business owner should have, according to this listicle. Now, like I said, these things are important, and a lot of things that you find online will toe this kind of line. But I find it really curious that a lot of these people just assume that, well, they start off with customer service, right? But then they just assume that somehow customers will magically appear. The number one thing, the thing that should be the alpha on this list actually should be sales. That is the top skill that every business owner should have, especially those of us in the wedding space, we wedding professionals. That is the top skill that we should have. You have people who start off being wedding planners this year, or photographers or whatever it is, and then you meet them in 2 years' time and they say, this industry, BM, the industry is too harsh, blah 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 or whatnot, and they leave and then they're in something else. The main reason why people fail is because they were not able to make sales. So that is the top skill that those of us who are in the industry need to have. So bottom line, for those of you who are my faithful listeners, and if you are in the wedding and the event space, all these things are important, but don't lose sight of the ball. The main skill that you need to get is sales, because it's only when you have sales and paying customers that you worry about customer service, or whether you're communicating with them properly, or whether you're managing the funds that have come from those interactions, or whether you're collaborating properly with people or delegating properly with people, because there's no point in collaborating or delegating or managing anything if there's nothing to manage in the first place. So the number one skill is sales. And I hope that there are a few of us out there who are preaching this message in Nigeria. I've seen a couple of, there's this lady in Lagos, I can't remember her name, and I've seen like 2 or 3 other chaps on LinkedIn. So hopefully this gospel will catch on soon, that money cures a multitude, sales covers a multitude of sins, and it's once we get sales in the mix that we can start worrying about all these other things. So the top number one skill that you need, in my own opinion, is sales and selling. After that, you can worry with the top 5, which are customer service, communication, money management, collaboration, and delegation. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I am your host, Abuja-based photographer Tabishima Ayede. You can hit me up on email at ayede.taver@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you all at the next episode.